Hello and welcome to the Parenting 101, your guide to a joyful parenting journey summit. My name is Elizabeth Stitt. My business is Joyful Parenting Coaching. And today we get started with a topic that can make or break the parenting experience, and that is sleep. Helping us with that is Joanna Clark, a pediatric sleep expert and certified gentle sleep coach. She helps sleep deprived families get where they want to be, well rested. There's no need to cry it out. With Joanna, easy bedtimes, peaceful nights, reliable naps, and confident parenting in a harmonious household are all possible. She provides guilt-free and gentle sleep coaching solutions with proven evidence-based methods. Her step-by-step child-led approach helps you to tenderly teach the skills of sleep to your child. Over the past decade, she has helped over 1,000 families solve their child's sleep struggles, and she is ready to help your family sleep blissfully too. Recognized as one of the top 200 coaches in the US and a 3 times international best-selling author, today we welcome Joanna Clark to talk to us about 5 things that kept your child awake last night and how to avoid them. Hi, Joanna. What exactly is sleep coaching?
Well, I'm so glad you asked because there are so many misperceptions about what is sleep coaching, what is sleep training, what is a sleep consultant. And so I think that's a great way for us to start today. So I recognize fully that the word sleep training and sleep coaching can have a very negative connotation, and that people immediately start to visualize a child crying it out.
Hmm.
And what I mean by that is being left unattended in their room to figure it out, and that the parent is not there to support the child's learning. And I want to make it really clear that I do not believe in cry it out. But I want to rearrange, hopefully for you, when sleep coaching and sleep training is done with the underpinnings of sleep science, behavioral science, and attachment theory, meaning when you do sleep coaching the right way with these beautiful grounding sciences of sleep science, behavioral science, and attachment theory, that all sleep coaching really is creating the optimal circumstances for a child to learn their sleep skills. And people will often say, well, what do you mean learn their sleep skills? What does that mean? How can a baby who's 6 or 9 or 10 or 12, 10 months old learn their sleep skills? So what the sleep skills are 3 skills: self-regulation, followed by self-settling, followed by self-soothing. There are 3 separate skills that have to be learned, and they first have to learn the regulation piece. Then the child has to learn the self-settling piece. Then they have to learn the self-soothing piece. And then they have to learn how to use all 3 skills in tandem. Okay. And
Okay.
the easiest time for a child to learn their sleep skills is under the following conditions: at the onset of sleep at bedtime, after good daytime sleep, at the right sleep window, using the right temperament, using the right methodology to meet the temperament of the child. So there are 5 conditions that need to be met in order to create the optimal learning environment. And
Can I
once a
ask a
child
quick question?
learns, yes, one second. Once a child learns how to do that at the onset of sleep at bedtime, they can begin to use that same skill set at each arousal point all night long. So it's sequential learning.
Okay.
So when someone says, what is sleep training? What I really want you to start visualizing is that a parent is creating an optimal learning environment, optimal learning environment, and optimal circumstances for learning over the course of 2 to 3 weeks, so that a child can begin to learn how to regulate, settle, soothe at the onset of sleep under those 5 conditions, so that once this anchors, they can begin to do it at each arousal all night long. And the methodology that you choose in order to create that learning environment is needs to be matched with the temperament of the child that you have.
That sounds like a really important idea. Super
Yeah.
important. Say that one again.
Okay. So
The-
knowing that you want to create the optimal learning environment and the optimal circumstances, part of the optimal circumstances is choosing the sleep training methodology that meets the temperament of your child and or also meets your parenting values and goals. And what happens to a lot of families when they have either had negative associations with sleep training is because they have either selected the wrong methodology that is a mismatch with their child's temperament, or they haven't followed a methodology at all, and they've kind of been what I call sleep training on the edges. They're trying a little something here on this night, and then they're trying a little something different 2 nights from now, and then they're doing something different at 2 a.m. that they're doing at bedtime. And they create all these incredible inconsistencies for the child. And then there's no structured learning environment for the learning to even come online because they didn't create sequential learning, like I was trying to demonstrate in the beginning, over the course of 2 to 3 weeks for the learning to come online and then get anchored first at bedtime, then at arousals before 10 p.m., then arousals between 10 and 12, then arousals between 12 and
yeah.
3, and then arousals between 3 and 6 a.m. So there's multiple learning zones that are required to learn. And that's why it takes 2 to 3 weeks. So this misperception that it can be done in 3 days is another myth.
Yeah. That reminded me, I wanted to ask, is there an age at which this is too young to start?
Okay, great question. So typically children are ready to learn their sleep skills under the following conditions. They are typically have already passed their 4 to 5 month sleep regression, and they are rolling both ways. And what I mean by that is a child can go from their tummy to their back and then also be on their back and roll back over to their tummy, which is a 2-part milestone that typically happens somewhere between 4 and 6 months of age. So if you have a child that's a really fast learner and they have already mastered rolling both ways and they've gone through their 4 to 5 months sleep regression, then they are in the conditions where they have enough mobility to learn how to regulate, settle, and soothe. But there are some babies that don't move through those two criterion until 6 or 7 months, in which case, 6 or 7 months and above. And I also want to say that it's never too late to learn your sleep skills, that there are some children that are 3, 4, 5. There's even school age children that are 7, 8, 9, 10 years of age that have never learned their sleep skills. And it is never, ever too late to learn. So that's super important because so many families come to me with an older child, like a 5 or 6 year old, and they'll say, my child's a terrible sleeper. I think they're just doomed to be a terrible sleeper, but I'm willing to see if you could help me.
Yeah.
And what we learn through creating that optimal learning environment and scaffolding the learning over days and weeks, that child actually has incredible sleep habits. And they are a child that wants to sleep like 11 and a half hours a night, where previously they were maybe sleeping 8.5 or 9. And the parent is just astounded that they had a child going to bed at 10 and now they have a child going to bed at 6:30, and they can't believe that they've, gotten their whole evening back and the household is quiet and calm and bedtime is drama free. And so there's a lot of misperception that children are bad sleepers but in fact, they've just never learned their sleep skills. So they never had that optimal learning opportunity to come to be their best sleeper self.
That's really heartening to know that even if you've got an older child, it's not too late.
Oh yeah, it's not too late because that's like inferring that your child's never going to learn other skills such as like learning, tying their shoe,
Right.
learning how to potty train, learning how to take swim lessons, it's sequential learning.
Well, and I love that reminder that it's a skill.
Mhm.
And so that, the definition of a good sleeper versus a bad sleeper is just you've mastered skills, you're still working on mastering them.
Exactly. Exactly. That's a great way to put it. Exactly. So yeah, so big picture, you guys, there's nothing scary about sleep training. There's nothing mean, there's nothing bad, there's nothing negative, there's nothing sad about it. It is actually a beautiful thing. You are literally creating optimal circumstances and environment for your child to learn a new skill set sequentially over time so that they're anchored in healthy sleep habits for the rest of their life. So that's what's incredible about it. So I'm really out there trying to kind of destigmatize what sleep training is, because if it's done with, you know, the sleep science, behavioral science, and attachment theory, and you've got the methodology that meets the temperament of the baby, it can be a very joyful experience to watch your child learn and see them sleeping beautifully and waking up completely well rested and being like almost like a different baby. So
Yeah.
easy, such an easy baby. Hmm.
Would you like to tell us now a little bit about how temperament would affect things, or are you going to weave that in somewhere later?
Yeah, I will weave that in. So why don't we
Okay.
kind of talk about this whole concept of like what are 5 reasons why my child would be awake tonight?
Yeah.
Because people are always they're always asking me, why does my baby not sleep? Why does my baby not sleep? That's like every single, potential client that comes to me, that's pretty much the same question. And so I've kind of broken it down into 5 reasons why your baby's not sleeping, and then I'm going to give you a solution around it. Okay. And this is going to be in the workbook, so you'll have it to reference back to, but I'll just be referencing it here. Okay. So the first reason why your child, and again, child can be 6 months all the way up to, 10 years old. And I should say, those of you that have newborns, I don't want you to feel like you are doomed to be sleep deprived during newborn phase. Um, you can do sleep shaping, which is very different than sleep training. And I also want to assure you, those of you that have babies that have not yet rolled and all that good stuff, if you are using sleep crutches to help your child, so you're helping them, you're helping them go to sleep by, rocking, holding, nursing, co-sleeping, wearing them, all that good stuff. That is all fine. So during the newborn phase, it is perfectly normal and appropriate to offer sleep support to your child. Because genuinely in the newborn phase, they really, which is considered around 0 to 6 months, those newborn babies, they genuinely need a lot of sleep support. They need to be held, rocked, co-sleeped, nursed to sleep, bottle fed to sleep. So it's okay. So those of you that have been out there that everyone's like trying to sleep train their 3-month old, I just want to, if your mama heart is kind of saying, "Woo, I don't want to do that," I want to just validate for you there is no urgency, and that in fact, the learning potential of your child to truly learn their sleep skills from top to bottom is a higher percentage after they're rolling both ways and have passed that massive 4 to 5 month regression. Because part of the sleep skills is settling and soothing, and part of settling and soothing is mobility. And a baby that's stuck flat on their back in a Merlin sleep suit does not have a lot of mobility. And so they get very frustrated because they don't have the mobility to settle and soothe. So please don't feel that you have to sleep train a newborn baby. Sleep shaping is the way to go, and that you can wait and wait till your child has passed through those milestones. Okay. But for a baby or a child, let's just call it 6 months and older, the number one reason why your child will not sleep well that night is because your child's bedtime is too late. Okay. And I'm not talking 10 p.m. too late. I'm talking potentially 15 minutes too late. So, bedtime too late is a very, very specific sleep science component. Okay. When you have a child that goes to bed too late, the results are bedtime drama, multiple night awakenings, and a child who typically will wake somewhere between 4 and 6 a.m. and not want to go back to sleep. Those are the three problems that are totally, absolutely directly related to bedtime too late. And again, what I mean by bedtime too late is not necessarily like late, like 10 p.m. I'm talking could be 15 minutes too late for your particular child's age and stage. Okay. And we will get into solutions a little while. So, the second reason why your child might be up a lot at night is because at the onset of sleep at bedtime, you are putting your child down dead asleep or going down too drowsy. Okay, so let's talk about that for a second. What does that cause? All right, that causes the development of something called sleep crutches. And sleep crutches are defined as anything that has to be done to or for a child at the onset of sleep at bedtime. They will want some version of that support at every arousal all night long. So, if at the onset of sleep at bedtime, you nurse your baby till super drowsy, then you rock them until they're asleep while also simultaneously singing. And then you oh so gently try really hard ninja move to put your baby in the crib. And then if they stir, you put your hand on them and you shush and pat until they are dead asleep. You have by accident created about 5 and potentially 6 sleep crutches, also known as menu items, that your child is requiring you to do to or for them in order to go to sleep at bedtime. And if you have multiple crutches at the onset of sleep at bedtime, when they wake up in the middle of the night, they'll look around and they'll be like, hey, I have absolutely no idea how to get back to sleep because I don't have my sleep skills at the onset of sleep. So get on in here and fold out my menu. What do I want? Do I now want rocking? Do I want more nursing? Do I want bottle feeding? What do I want? Of my menu of sleep crutches that are associated with my bedtime routine, how many of these crutches am I now going to need at this one particular arousal? And what they might need at 10 p.m. is different when what they might need at 2, which is different from what they might need at 4. So for a lot of families, when they have multiple sleep crutches at the onset of sleep, meaning they are conking their child out via a series of activities to get them to go to sleep, one of the biggest problems families will have is the child will have multiple arousals all night long, and every arousal, the child may be demanding a different variety of crutches. So that is another reason why families say, why won't my child sleep? What is another reason why my child was awake last night? And it's because once they have crutches at the onset of sleep, every arousal, they're going to wake up and want a different variety of crutches.
Yeah.
And so it gets really hard on families because what they did on Tuesday night is not going to work on Wednesday night.
Yeah. Joanna, obviously the quality of the sleep of the adults in the house is going to go down if they're having to provide a sleep crunch. Is it also affecting the quality of sleep that the baby's getting? Or are they
Yeah.
going to still just use their crutch and go right back to sleep? And
Well, that's a great question because here's the thing. Sometimes the crutch that you offer is like super fast, right? Like you go in, you nurse them back down, they fall asleep. The whole thing takes like 5-10 minutes. But then some nights you go in and it takes you 40. And you never know why, and the baby never knows why, right? And so it's not like some nights, yeah, you might have a great night where the crutches work like magic. And then you might have other nights where it's like the front of the night was easy and the back of the night was hard. And so, no, is the child sleeping well? Probably not, because there's going to be lots of variability in the level of wakefulness that exists, which requires more crutches from the parent.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
But I want to say one thing about crutches because this is really important. Um, a lot of people will say, well, hey, my sleep crutches work for me. They're really fast, they're really easy, they're really reliable. And I go, fantastic. You are one of the lucky ones. So here's the deal, you guys. Remember what I said that in the newborn phase, it's totally normal and appropriate to have sleep crutches, right? So I'm a fan of sleep crutches. They can be beautiful, they can be fast, they can be easy, they can be loving, they can be responsive. Dad can have his own version of crutches. Your mom can have her own version of crutches. So there's nothing inherently bad about sleep crutches. They can work beautifully and they can work beautifully for years, which is why there are some kids that are still 7 that have sleep crutches. But at a certain point, two things will happen with sleep crutches. Either the sleep either the child's arousals are getting so jagged and ragged and the menu that's required becomes so demanding that the parent can't keep up. Um, and the parent's like, nothing's working anymore. Like literally, that's called sleep crutch failure, which is the parent goes in, the parent tries the 10 different things, nothing's working, everyone's miserable. That's one reason why families might need to sleep train is because they're in sleep crutch failure mode. Another reason why they might need to consider sleep training is when it goes to what I call sleep crutch escalation, which is this feeling that, Tuesday was great, Wednesday was miserable, Thursday, Friday were fine, Saturday, Sunday, Monday were miserable because, again, the menu's getting like less and less reliable and you're heading towards sleep crutch failure, right? So you're in escalation mode before it flat out fails. And some people will call me during that time and say, I got to get ahead of this because I can see where it's going. I can see where we're going to hit, I call it hitting the skids where nothing's going to work. Um, and so for some families whose children hang on to sleep crutches all the way to age 7, either two things happened. Either the parents never hit their capacity or the sleep crutches never hit failure.
Yeah.
So again, that's why sleep crutches aren't wrong or bad to have, but there's always a potential for that to happen. And that's when sleep training can be great because that's when you can teach your baby the sleep skills. Which is why, again, people always say, I just would hope that he would grow out of it, that, by 3 or 4, he would already have learned how to sleep. And I always say, no, they don't. Remember, sleep is a learned skill. So you have to create the environment and circumstances for the learning to come online because they will always want a sleep crutch. Because who wouldn't? Who wouldn't want somebody to do all that beautiful caretaking at the onset of sleep? I would love it if someone did this to my back all night. I mean, right? But that's why they don't just magically learn it. You have to create the environment for learning.
Yeah.
Okay, so number 3. Number 3 is not enough daytime sleep or the right interval between the naps. Okay. So why is that important? Why would having bad naps create an awful night? Well, the number one reason is that when you don't have enough daytime sleep, and I call it filling the sleep tank, then you are doomed for very choppy arousals all night long. And what I mean by choppy arousals is many arousals and arousals where the level of wakefulness is very big. And they are like awake, like maybe even wanting to play at 2 a.m. So for a lot of families, they think, oh, if my child doesn't, if I skip a nap, maybe he'll go to bed earlier, or if I skip a nap, maybe he'll sleep longer tonight. Unfortunately, it's the reverse. The better and higher quality daytime sleep at the proper sleep intervals is actually going to help you have an easier bedtime and smoother sleep cycles all night. So that's a big one. So naps are super important. And I should say children continue napping until 3.5 or 4. Which is wonderful.
I mean, we used to have naps in kindergarten, so clearly there are some kids who can still.
Oh yeah, there's some kids that can still like maybe 2 or 3 days a week would just love to have quiet time. But I will tell you that even if they drop a nap, you still want to provide quiet time for them. So whatever was the previous nap time, let's say your nap time used to be 1 to 2, you still want to have it where the child is having quiet time during that time. Because children, especially between the ages 3 and 5, are just not ready for these massively long stimulated days. And they need some downtime, because if you don't, then you end up with behavioral issues in the evening, which Elizabeth probably coaches parents around all the time.
Yeah,
They just can't handle that much stimulation all day.
makes sense.
Okay, number 4. You guys ready for number 4? Here we go. Number 4 is inconsistency on how you respond to your child in the middle of the night. Okay, so let's talk about that. So, the reason why that causes drama in the night is that when parents by accident respond inconsistently, it causes more crying in the middle of the night because the child is trying to cry to get a different response. So, for example, in the situation that we were talking about a minute ago about sleep crutches. So, let's say normally mom goes in at 10 p.m. to do a feed when the baby wakes up at 10. But tonight, mom is too tired and she sends dad in, and dad is trying to rock him instead. The baby's going to be like, no, 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 no. The pattern is mom gets in here, I nurse to sleep. Why are you showing up? Why are you rocking me? I don't like this. Get back in my root, my preferred sleep crutch. You are not one of my preferred sleep crutches. So then the baby cries, 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 cries for a different response, which then creates the dynamic where dad's got to go hand the baby back over to mom. Mom is totally annoyed because she just told dad to handle it. And next
Yeah.
thing you know, she's been woken up and now she's nursing the baby. Right. And this is classic situation, right? It's this dilemma in the middle of the night where you're both hitting each other saying who's going to go in at 3 a.m. or 4 a.m. And one night it's dad and dad rocks. And then another night mom comes in and pats his back. And then another night she agrees to nurse him because he patting and rocking didn't help. So she finally relented to nursing. So all this inconsistency when you're responding in the middle of the night actually totally creates more drama in the night. And it's really difficult. And so that's why a baby will wake more, is because they're crying for a different response.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. And now the 5th one is underlying medical conditions
Hmm.
and or developmental milestones. So this is one that's often very, very overlooked that I think is important just to take a moment to talk about. So I first want to talk about underlying medical conditions. If you have a baby under 6 months and they are waking up all the time and even the sleep crutches are not working well, I bet an underlying medical condition is probably causing it.
Could you define all the time?
Well, like, so we've got, so the couple of the ones that can hit some of these younger babies are reflux, silent reflux, eczema, constipation. Those are the big four. Um, and it is such a relief when a family member finally makes the link between the underlying medical condition and the erratic sleep behavior, because that doesn't mean they're doomed to a bad sleeper. It means that the baby was highly uncomfortable and the baby needs help with those medical conditions. And then usually the sleep smooths out. And especially with eczema, a lot of babies have eczema, and even even toddlers. And what you need to know about that is that oftentimes before the rash develops, the baby's actually having a feeling of itchiness before
Mm.
the rash even appears.
How
So
would we recognize that?
yeah, so it's so hard because what will typically happen is the baby will be having really, really, really bad sleep for like a week, and then finally the rash appears. And then they finally go to the doctor and get all the lotions and potions. And then it takes like another week or so for the skin to calm down. And then the parents think, oh, once the rash goes away, I'll lay off on all the lotions and the potions. But then the baby starts sleeping well again. And then all of a sudden the sleep gets bad again. It's because now that itchy is building, but the parent doesn't see the correlation between the rash and the itch.
Mm.
Yeah. So
Got it. Okay.
that's a real one. And then reflux and silent reflux are also really big conditions for children. Those will absolutely cause sleep um, challenges, because reflux and silent reflux means that the digestive system is slightly immature, such that when they're lying down on their back, the digestive fluids come up into the esophagus and it breaks the sleep cycle. So your 4-month-old could be happily and beautifully asleep in the middle of the night, but if they have a reflux episode,
Mm.
that burning sensation comes up into the esophagus, breaks their sleep cycle. They wake up with a burst of crying. So you grab them. The baby's highly uncomfortable because they have that burning sensation. So they'll typically want to be held upright, and they'll typically want to nurse back to sleep because they want to swallow the feeling. And then they go back to sleep. But then what happens is it starts another digestive cycle. And then about an hour or two later, the
Oh,
baby
because you've fed them
again.
something in order to help them go back to sleep.
Right. And then the baby has another reflux episode and wakes up screaming. And then the mom holds him upright and then feeds
Yeah,
him.
yeah, yeah. I'm seeing
And now it
that.
just goes round and round and round and round. And so oftentimes these newborn moms will call me and be like, this baby wakes up like literally every 45 to 60 minutes. And when we start to look at the pattern and we start to look at the behaviors of waking with a burst of crying, straining to have a bowel movement, hiccuping all the time, making weird barking sounds at night. There's like a whole list of silent reflux symptoms that you can look up. You'll come to realize, like, oh, even if my baby's not spitting up, they're still very uncomfortable, which is why they call it silent reflux. Like there's
Okay.
not that outward. Um, so the underlying medical conditions can often really be massive reasons why your child's waking at night, but you're just not making the correlation. The other thing that I mentioned here is developmental milestones. So I always recommend families have this book. It's called The Wonder Weeks. And buy the hard copy and then get the app. And this is what the app logo looks like when you go on the app store,
Little like Casper the
like a
goat.
little baby. Okay. Because in the first 20 months of life, there are 10 developmental leaps. And every single time there's a developmental leap, there will be some version of a sleep regression. Always. You can't get around this. And so if parents are not in tune with where their child is in their leap progress, they will run into a period which, if you get the app, it will show you if you're in the stormy period, which means that your baby is in rapid development. And when they're in rapid development, the baby has horrible sleep patterns. They're crying, clingy, cranky during the day. They're nap skipping. They're nap resisting. they're crying at bedtime, they're waking up multiple times a night, they're waking up for like 2 hours in the middle of the night playing or practicing their skill. And you're wondering, what happened to my wonderful baby? My baby's sleep has fallen apart. Well, no, it hasn't fallen apart. Your baby's in a wonder week, or what I call milestone madness, because when they're in milestone madness, sleep is miserable. And so oftentimes families don't know they're in a milestone. And so they start thinking, oh, maybe they're sick, or maybe they're teething, or maybe they're hungry. And they start looking at the problem in the wrong manner. If they understood that they were in a milestone, they would know how to help the baby. And what I love about the book is it gives you exercises you can do with your baby to help them master the milestone so that you are not stuck inside milestone madness longer than you need to be.
I'll have
So
to
that,
check that out. That is not a book that I've been familiar with.
yeah, it's fascinating. It's wonderful to learn all the amazing things they're doing during a milestone. It will help you appreciate the fact that they are cranky is because they're learning, like their world feels so different to them that they're a little bit disoriented. But when you can respect that, then you're not as impatient with them that they're not sleeping as well, because they're ramped up to meet the milestone, that they are literally energized to master it. Yeah.
Fabulous.
Yeah.
Joanna, I have some questions for you, but we're going to take a quick pause for our station break, so to speak. Thanks so much for sharing those 5 reasons why our kids might be awake at night. I have some questions,
Great.
and I don't know how many we'll get to, but let's see what we can cover in the time that we have. How do you know if you're like, well, you're telling me it's a 15-minute window and already it's too late to be putting my child to sleep? How do I find the right time?
Okay, that's so great. So I'm going to explain a concept that of sleep windows that you probably heard of it before, but you maybe haven't heard it explained quite in this way. So I want you to be thinking about this as it relates to bedtime or morning nap, because those are the two times your child is most likely to start to present this sleep science concept. Okay. So there are two hormones that regulate sleep. There's melatonin, which is your drowsy hormone, and there's cortisol, which is your wakefulness hormone. So at the onset of sleep at bedtime, melatonin comes on board right here. And where I have this word optimal, that is where there's a ton of melatonin on board, making two things happen. Bedtime is easier. It's easier for your child to fall asleep because there's lots and lots of juicy hormone. And the second thing it does is when you fall asleep in this optimal zone, you tend to have very smooth sleep cycles. As you move through this melatonin cycle, you kind of come down here to what I call the orange and the red zone, which I'll come back and explain in a minute. But at the end of the red zone, it's like a steel door closes, and there is no more supportive sleep hormone in the system. And instead, you get this giant surge of cortisol, which is a wakefulness hormone, mild form of adrenaline. And when I call this cortisol land, by the way. And when you're in cortisol land, your baby's going to have a very, very hard time falling asleep, whether you're using sleep crutches or not. You will know if you are in cortisol land under 3 conditions, depending on the age of your child. The first way you'll know you're there is if your child is wired and tired. That is where you can really tell that they're fighting sleep, that they are tense, and that it's very effortful for you trying to sleep crutch them. The second reason is if your child is getting goofy. And what I mean by that is they're laughing and giggling and spinning and running around and jumping off the bed, or, just being really like their energy is way too high. Like they're in a good mood, but they're just a little too hyped up. That is cortisol land. And the third way you'll know if you're in cortisol land is for older children, especially, is defiance.
Hmm.
no tantrums. But even babies can be defiant. They can be pushing away from you. Um, but the problem with being in cortisol land is that it lasts 45 to 90 minutes. And so if you are desperately trying to use sleep crutches to get a baby to go to sleep in here, it's going to be very effortful. It's going to take forever. Or if you're trying to start a bedtime routine, you're going to just hit so much resistance. It's just going to be very chaotic bedtime, lots of negotiation, lots of drama, um, very unpleasant experience. Okay. So we don't ever want to be in cortisol land when we're doing bedtime, ever. Okay. That's just going to mean bad news for everybody. So let's talk about what red zone and orange zone is. Red zone is if your child is already rubbing their eyes, or they're yawning, or they're touching their ear or their neck, then they are already overtired. That's red zone. And for a lot of families, they don't start the bedtime routine until they see the first eye rub. And frankly, by the time they do the bath, do the teeth, they are lodged completely inside cortisol land. And that's why bedtime takes forever and ever and ever and ever, because they are battling their child all the way through cortisol land, and they're waiting to catch the child at the second sleep window, right? Because if you miss sleep window number one, you can go through cortisol land and catch them on number two.
Yeah.
But for children, especially like for you as a parenting coach, I mean, you probably have 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 year olds that are going to bed at 10 or 11. That is guaranteed. Not only they miss sleep window number one, but they miss number two, and they're probably catching the baby on sleep window, the child at sleeping window number three.
Yes. And then they are very groggy and miserable and unpleasant in the morning.
Totally. Right. So if a child is in red zone, that's not good too. You are already too late of a bedtime. Okay. So what's the orange zone? Orange zone can be very hard to see, but if you watch your child very carefully, you'll see it. It's a little bit easier to see in kids that are 3 and 4, but you can sometimes see it in younger babies. But there's something about orange zone where the child wants to be making physical contact with either you or the floor, or they want to be bumping up against the furniture or something. Okay.
I
Um,
I call it, I think this is the orange zone. I call it, I tell parents to look for the slump.
mhm.
Like, I'm up, I'm interacting, and then all of a sudden I've got my elbow on the table or I'm
Okay. Well, that
flopped.
actually could be called blue zone. So let's go here.
Okay.
Okay. So what's blue zone? Because blue zone is where you already want to be in the bedroom. Like you want to be done with bath, done with teeth, done with book. Like you want to be at best, or at the latest, you want to be done with everything, and maybe you're reading books in the blue zone. You don't want to be trying to do stuff down here, and you certainly don't want to be doing it here. Okay, so blue zone is you have to watch very carefully, because there's some kids that will hide it from you. They won't show you anything unless they are in a dimly lit room with a full belly. And sometimes they have to have absolutely no outside stimulation. So, for example, I'm going to explain what these blue signs are, but if you have a scenario where dad gets home, you're calling grandma on FaceTime, and the sibling brought out a new toy, no one's going to show you any blue zones, because there's so much stimulation in the
Right.
environment that they're going to use the environment to create stimulation for them to stay awake. Okay. So the blue signs, they're either going to show it on their face, or they're going to show it in their demeanor. And they might only show you one sign. And for some really, really tricky children, they will develop their own custom sign. So if I describe this to you and you don't see it, be open to the fact your child might have a custom sign. So if it's on the face, they have red over the eyebrows, red on the eyelids, rosy cheeks, red rimmed eyes, blue or puffy underneath here. Okay. Or they could show it in their demeanor. And the demeanor is what one of the ones is what Elizabeth just said, which is they could be engaged and all of a sudden they kind of get the blahs. The energy comes down, they space out, they kind of lose their magic a little bit, but then they return to you. It's not like they slump and then stay slumped. They do return. So which is why if you're not watching carefully, you'll miss the whole slump. And then the second one is where they will get like a bout of irritability, but then return to being happy. Those are also blue signs. So the key is to first start tracking your child's continuum. So for example, a child that still is napping, the wakefulness window between afternoon nap, wake up, and being asleep at bedtime, not trying to go to sleep, being asleep by bedtime is no more than 4 to 5 hours. So if we were to use this and how you guys can decode this for yourself, if your child today is 10 months old and just woke up from a nap at 3, I would start watching your child at the 3-hour mark. What does he look like at the 3-hour mark post-nap? What does he look like at 3 hours and 15 minutes, 3 hours and 30 minutes? Oh, interesting. Saw some rosy cheeks at 3 hours and 30 minutes. Oh, he started headbutting me at 3 hours and 45 minutes. Oh, at the 4-hour mark, I saw eye rubs. Oh my gosh, by 4 hours and 10 minutes, he's totally in cortisol land.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's what I mean about you could be 15 minutes late because some kids end of blue to full blown black is between 7 and 15 minutes.
Ooh, yeah.
So you have to be watchful and you have to make sure the environment is not too stimulating or else they'll hide the cues.
Well, I
So
love the
you know,
advice to take notes and to track things. I mean, you can never go wrong with data, right? The data might not show you a clear picture, but it's never going to hurt. So I love when parents commit to keeping good data about something.
yeah, it really because remember, all the learning begins at bedtime. So if you are not approaching the bedtime sleep window in the blue zone, most likely you're going to have a lot of bedtime drama, whether you're using crutches or not.
And is that I was going to ask about like what makes too drowsy, but I think you've kind of answered this.
Yeah. So what makes too drowsy is this. Like, so when a child 100% knows their sleep skills, they're going to go into the crib drowsy but awake, 5 or 6 on the schedule. And you're going to see them use all 3 skills. You're going to see them self-regulate, self-settle, and self-soothe themselves all the way down the sleepy scale from level 5 drowsy all the way down to 10 drowsy, dead asleep.
Okay.
Okay, so this is when a child has already learned their sleep skills. They will go into the crib drowsy but awake, 5 or 6 on the scale, and they will step themselves down to 10 drowsy or 10 asleep. Too drowsy is when you use a sleep crutch all the way to level 8 drowsy, and then you just stop, putting them in the, like, let's say you're patting until they're almost asleep, and then you stop patting and you wonder why they're screaming at you. It's because you're not sleep training them, and because they're basically like, I'm way down here. Why did you stop giving me my sleep crutch? I have no capacity to learn anything down here.
Yeah.
And I don't have any capacity to learn sleep skills here.
And where is our drowsy? Let's see if I learn this. Because you said that by blue you want to be in the bedroom.
Yeah, so that's where they
And
would be in the crib at drowsy but awake, so
so
that they are
at
settling.
blue, a small child would be in the crib.
Yeah, because you want them to have between 5 and 30 minutes to regulate, settle, soothe themselves to sleep.
Okay.
Children don't just get into, just like us, we don't just like get into bed and conk out. That's not good. Like no one should conk out because conking out means you're overtired. There should be a little bit of like, I'm turning to my left, I'm turning to my right, I'm talking to myself, because you want to step yourself down into the sleep cycle.
Hmm. I might have to keep my own sleep data.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yep.
Um, I have so many more questions I want to ask. I know that we don't really have the time. Um, I'm sure that I mean I don't even have a baby to train right now, and
Yeah.
I've got questions. I'm sure the parents with small children at home have tons.
Yes.
So,
So yeah, so I'll
um,
tell you if you guys have questions. So let me tell you a couple things. Number one, this handout is going to be for you. This QR code um, allows you to download the free guide, the 5 reasons why your child was awake right now, your 5 reasons why your child was awake last night and what to do about it. So you can get this free
so
guide.
let's really hold that up so that if parents want to take their phones out right now and snap that, we're gonna say 5. You're getting your phone. 4, you're looking for the camera app, but you are all so much
Okay.
technologically advanced.
And
You
I'll
guys know how to do it quickly.
Yeah, and I'll talk while they're waiting. So, but I also want to let you know that if you go to my website, which is blissfulbabysleepcoaching.com, you'll know it's me because there's a big blue baby. He's really cute. That's my blue baby is my logo guy. Um, under resources, I have a ton of free guides. So I have guides on sleep regressions, ages and stages, sleep guide, like meaning to like, okay, how much nap should my baby have at 10 months versus 18 months, that kind of thing. I have this sleep guide, many sleep guides on my resources page, and they're all free. So you can go there and download those. If you feel that you want to speak to me because you're like, I have so many questions, I just need to talk about my specific situation and my specific child, I do something called a sleep strategy session, which is an hour-long session with you, me, and your partner. So your partner's got to be on the call. Sleep is not it's a family issue. It's a family system issue. This is not something for just one parent to be in charge of. So in the sleep strategy session, it's an hour-long session where you will fill out a form in advance so that I can get all the backstory so that I can come to the conversation prepared to give you insight and perspective on what is happening in your particular situation and whether or not you have to sleep train and what your options are if you need to sleep train. Okay, that's
Excellent.
$150 to do that. I do record it. Families love it. Some families get all the information they need and go off and are successful, and some other families decide that they need more sleep support
More
through
handling.
sleep coaching, right? So some people they know they need to sleep train, but they're too afraid to do it on their own, or they want to do it well and they want to do it once
Yes.
and want to feel
Well,
good
and
about
I
the
will jump in
process.
here at this point and I will say, um, my own feeling on on where do we spend money on our kids? I mean, over the course of their lifetimes, we are going to spend a ton of money on them. Spending money on something that comes up and is problematic every single day is worth its weight in gold. So, I don't know what Joanna charges, but I am saying that if you are considering a time to spend money and you're struggling with sleep, definitely this is the time to do it. If you weren't able to catch the QR code, go back to the email today where you got the link to today's talk, and the link is there by Joanna's picture and her bio. So
Yes.
you absolutely have full access to her, and I've looked at her website and it's very comprehensive. You're going to find what you need.
Yes, yes. Well, thank you so much for having me. And just my last thing I just want to say, sleep is solvable. It is a solvable problem, which is great. And
That
it can
is
be solved in like 2 to 4 weeks. which is amazing.
That
And
is completely
and
amazing.
it's not cried out, and it can be very gentle. So it is not, so I hope I have destigmatized sleep training with you, and to know that there are wonderful people that can help you, but the key is finding somebody that has a methodology that resonates. I'm a gentle sleep coach, which means I don't believe in cry it out, and parents are in the room helping their child learn, because when do you leave your child alone to learn? Never. So
Yes.
you're there in the room. So thank you, Elizabeth, for having me be part of your parenting seminar.
And thank you very much, Joanna Clark, certified gentle sleep specialist.